You guys ready? Should we do this?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Faith Center, I'm here with Dan and Joy Russell from Amman, Jordan, joining me on Zoom. And you've perhaps heard them before here as our guest speakers, and they've been here on, I don't know, at least like 3 occasions, I think, at the church. I mean, Joy only once, but Dan did a men's retreat, and we're sending a team there this spring, and we're super excited about that. You guys excited to have a team there?
Super excited.
We just want to say we love Faith Center. It's been really an honor the times that we've been able to be there. We have also been with you when you've had teams here, and we are very excited to welcome you here to this part of the world, and to watch what God does in the midst of having your feet here in this place. It's such a unique place where you begin to see things, you begin to read things that you've read since childhood, but all of a sudden it comes to life in a whole new way. And so we are excited to welcome Faith Center, and of course, we so much love, honor, and respect you. Wow. And it's a huge blessing.
Well, we love you guys. And, you know, most people don't realize Jordan, where you live, is actually part of the original Holy Land. So we don't often think of that. We think of Israel, but it was much bigger back in the day. But we are right here in the middle of this sermon on Ephesians chapter 6, this whole famous passage on spiritual warfare. And as I got to that part where our struggle is not against flesh and blood, and I thought of that, the more traditional translations that say we wrestle not against flesh and blood, I thought that word wrestle, which is the right word to use really, is something that you, Dan, are an expert in wrestling. You've been an Olympic wrestling coach, 4-time NCAA wrestling champion. And I just thought it'd be good to get your insight into spiritual wrestling. Like when you read that verse, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. What are some of the connotations that come to mind in terms of what spiritual wrestling is?
It's a great question. And, I think this is true, is that everyone wrestles. Life is a wrestling match. And as a wrestler, the idea is to struggle and overcome. And it's the work, the discipline, the training, all those things so that you can overcome in the midst of the struggle. And that passage, it really speaks to the fact that we are in a wrestling match, but knowing where the fight is, knowing what the fight is about, knowing what we're to engage in, and that people are not the enemy. These things, though, can oftentimes distract us. So keeping our eyes fixed onto what is important and where is the fight, and how do I move forward, press forward in these areas where it says, it's not the flesh and blood, but there is a wrestling match that is taking place. Where we live is one of the most unique places as a wrestler, because I don't live far from where Jacob had an epic wrestling match with God.
Yeah.
And I think one of the pictures of that wrestling match that I love is in the midst of it, Jacob loses this match, which is no surprise. You wrestling God, that's not a surprise. But it was in losing to God where Jacob actually won. It was in losing that it changed the whole direction of his life. It was in losing this idea of learning to surrender to God's ways, to God's strategy, to God's will, when our flesh wants to rise up, or we want what we want, and that spiritual battle that happens in us. And the thing that I see in the wrestling match of life is the way to win in the wrestling match is all about surrender.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good.
It's it's counter to what we would normally think, but that's how Jacob won his wrestling match.
Now, this passage, Ephesians 6, it says, we're wrestling against rulers and authorities, and forces of evil in the spiritual realms. So there's that part, we don't want to lose to those guys, right? We don't want to lose that
Right.
battle. So obviously, first thing to actually win the battle is surrender. Like you said, surrender to the Lord. But also,
and where we surrender is important, that it is to the Lord, not to the rulers, not to these principalities that are out to distract us, that are out to shame us, that are out to beat us down. That has never been God's heart. God has always been for us to become more of who we are, more of who we're created to be. And so if we want to be a champion, it is to surrender to him and not to these things. And that is a battle. That is a fight.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Now, when it comes to engaging, in that spiritual battle, there's, I'm sure, some parallels in wrestling to what it takes to win. I think about like your training that leads you into the battle. I think about like the concentration that's necessary. Are there any like specific like wrestling strategies that you think would lead, to the greatest chance of overcoming?
Yeah, the thing that when I reflect on my own personal wrestling career, and then I try to take that and say, what does that speak to me in life? Is as a wrestler, I was never the strongest guy on the mat. I wasn't the fastest guy on the mat. I trained hard. I worked hard. I mean, I spent the hours on the mat, and I had a good grasp of the technical aspects of it, but there were a lot of things that I wasn't good at. But what I think helped set me apart in wrestling was the ability to stay present. In a match, there's times where I was wrestling, especially when I was younger, and I'm wrestling older guys, that they would take me down in that first round, and I'd feel like I was a rag doll, being dragged around the mat. But I never let being taken down or getting scored upon. I didn't let that get into my head. I didn't dwell on the past. And I didn't worry about the future of whether or not my hand was going to be raised. My job in the wrestling match was to stay present in the moment. And if I had been taken down on the mat, then the wrestling match was there. And I was always fighting in the moment, forgetting what had just happened, not worrying about what was to happen, and staying present. That helped me be successful. And I won a lot of matches just because I just kept fighting. I might be down by 6 points, 7 points, but I never stopped battling in the present. And that you do that over and over and over, and you learn to live, I think, in the wrestling match of life, of staying present and knowing who's present with you. One of the things that I think about often is wherever my feet are, God is.
Yeah.
And if God is with me, then I can fight whatever it is that I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
But if I start worrying about what tomorrow is going to hold, or if I start feeling the shame of what happened yesterday, or the different things, those things beat you down and beat you down. But if I can recognize God's present with me now, and he will give me the strength right now, and now is enough. Him with me right now is enough to get through whatever it is that I'm facing now.
Yeah.
And that's a discipline. It's a discipline. It's not easy.
Yeah.
The enemy is really good at getting us to feel shame or pride. And he bounces us back and forth between those two things. He gets us worrying about things that may not happen, but our mind, our creativity in our mind will take us to those places. And we have to discipline ourselves to come right back to the present.
Wow. Well, that's really great. Thank you, Dan, for that insight. I think in this, we're all wrestlers, we're all wrestling. Staying present in the moment has got to be a key, because we're so tempted, like you said, to be living in the past or worried about the future. And so responding to what's happening right now with the armor and the weapons that God has given us, with the authority that he's given us, and with his power, which is in us as well. So we love you guys. We're praying for you and look forward to sending a team your way.
Yeah,
Hey,
we are
we-
so excited. So excited. So get prepared. It's going to be an amazing time.
All right.
And we close with this. If you're on this side of eternity, you're a wrestler. Life is a wrestling match. Fight the good fight, finish strong.
And you're a runner too. Don't forget that one.
See ya.
Hey,
Bye.
blessings.
All right.